most investors lose money not because they can't analyse numbers, but because they let their emotions take over. So before I continue on, apologies for the sound quality. I know it's not fantastic, but hopefully it's not horrendous, and hopefully you will gain some value from this video. So it's important for you to understand that emotions should never get in the way of business decisions, okay? And obviously property investing, you're looking to build on your wealth, you're looking to build on your cash flow. You need to make sure that you understand it's completely down to being disciplined. I'll talk about that later on, but it's a business decision and that you should not let your emotions get in the way. So I've got a few things that I want to cover in today's video. So first thing really, why emotions sabotages property decisions. I think most of all, working with people and obviously being an investor since 2007, overbidding is always a common theme, especially between new investors. Really, they can get a little bit carried away with the property, get a little bit carried away that they can now purchase the second or third property. And obviously when you start to overbid, as soon as you start to overbid for properties, things are already starting to get away from you, because obviously one of the rules is you need to lock in profit, lock in equity from day one, okay? So you always want to be securing the property at the best possible price and not overbidding. So again, there's a lot of this to do with, fear of missing out. What happens if somebody else gets the property and so on? This is apparent definitely in auctions, okay? Sometimes the auctioneer could be throwing bids off the wall. You won't know, especially if it's a busy one, it's a live auction and so on. That's why you need to be really clear on how much your maximum offer is going to be for this type of property, or for the property that you're looking for, really. Now, some people like to chase, nice looking properties, beautiful properties, whatever you want, but those aren't necessarily the profitable ones. If you're looking to obviously be in this for the long journey, which I'm sure you are if you're watching this so far in, you understand that it's not so much the nice looking properties that are going to be the most profitable, but it's going to be the ones that might not be ugly, but not as nice as obviously some of the other ones, really. Unless you're looking to flip properties. Now, if you are looking to flip properties, obviously you're going to be a property trader rather than an investor, then you could buy ugly houses and make them nice looking. Then there's going to be big margins there if you've done things properly. But what you don't want to be doing is, as well as overbidding, having the fear of missing out, you do not want to be purchasing nice turnkey properties. So if any of you have seen any of my videos before, when we finished our refurbs and they go out onto the rental market, they're done to a very decent spec for renters. They're not done to a spec for, a flip where I want to really increase, that lump of cash, but they've done for a very, very decent standard for renters, okay? So have a look at some of those videos. What you shouldn't do, and again, I know I keep looking over it, because I want to make sure I cover these important things, really, letting your pride or ego take over. At the end of the day, it's a business decision. Don't let your pride come into it. Don't let your ego come into it. Don't overbid. Don't pay over the odds for a property that 12 months down the line, you're going to think, I can't believe I got sucked into this. Why have I paid an extra 2, 3, 5, 10, 20,000 pounds for this property? Now I'm even further in the hole, and it's going to take me longer to get, my money back, or the return on capital employed's not as high as I wanted it to be. So take your pride, take your ego off the table, and don't even let it get involved, okay? Just make sure it all boils down to you, doing your correct due diligence, and not, again, linking it back to fear of missing out. If somebody else gets a property, fine, don't worry, okay? If you're one of these that looks on Rightmove every 24 hours, you'll notice that hardly ever has there been 0 properties listed in 24-hour period. So you need to make sure that you understand that properties come and go all the time, okay? The deal of the century, I remember reading it in one of the books years ago, comes around once every couple of weeks, okay? So just be aware of that. Signs you're being emotional. This is a key one. I definitely rapidly escalating offers. So if you've gone to view a property, well done. If you've done your due diligence, which you should have done pre-viewing in the research stage, then you'll know how much meat on the bone there is there for you. So if you're doing the traditional BRRR, you're purchasing the property via cash or bridging, you're then adding value from a decent refurb, you're then putting it on a long-term mortgage to then pull out or refinance most of your money, so there's not that money left in the deal. You need to be understanding that as soon as my offers start to escalate, then I'm reducing my profit margins. Unless, and again, this is where the market can be kind to you, unless we're in that part of the property cycle where the market can carry you through, but you don't actually know that. So I would rather I want to be able to control the things I can control. So the first thing I can control is buying a decent property at a decent price. Or again, like Warren Buffett says, his saying is buying great companies at fair prices. The same will be true for us. We want to buy great properties at fair prices. So you're already locking it in from day one, so that even if your refurb does go over budget, does take longer, does increase your holding cost, at least you've got that buffer. So always be aware of escalating offers without justification, especially when the agent's in the middle. If you're not doing direct to vendor, so the agent might say things like, well, if you come up an extra 5 or 10,000, it's yours. Why does it always need to be 5,000 and 10,000 and so on? Why can it not be, if I just come up an extra 1,100 quid? If I just come up an extra 2,100, or if I come up an extra 2,450. So remember, it's in your interest to lock it in from day one, okay? Don't let the estate agent control your buying decisions for you. It's a good one as well. Signs you're being emotional, comparing yourself to other investors. Everybody's in, their own boat, really, okay? So the mentees that I'm lucky enough to work with, they're all clear on what their particular why is. It might be to increase the cash flow. It might be, and often is, the business owners with quite a decent business, they've got profits from the business, they're taking it out as dividends and so on, but they realise that putting it in the bank doesn't necessarily give them a greater return as investing in bricks and mortar. That's what happened with me. So from that, I understand it from that point of view. So we need to make sure that the money that we're putting into it, we're getting a decent, really good, decent return there as well, really. Tools and methods to stay disciplined. Have you got your checklist to go around when you're doing your viewing? Have you got your checklist before doing the viewing to check that, I think this is a contender? So if any of you have seen my videos where I'm out and about doing the viewings and so on, we don't do as many as we used to, definitely not, but that's because we're happy in our portfolio size at the moment. Of course, we still want to increase it, but we're not these that are going to be doing 10, 20, 30 viewings a week or so on like that. We need the viewing really, in order to get to the viewing stage, you've got the research stage to check that the numbers are all working out. And again, I didn't mention anything about emotions there. So if you're looking on Rightmove, on the market, Zoopla, whatever, you don't necessarily look at the property and think, wow, that looks really, really nice. You're looking at it thinking, what's the square footprint like? Can I add value? How much is it going to cost me to add value? Could I pull out enough money? How much money am I likely to leave in? Is that justifiable? What's likely to be my return on investment? What's likely to be my return on capital employed? How much am I likely to rent this out top end? Is the market saturated? So again, everything boils down to business discipline, the essentials, nothing to do with emotions, which is where if you ever gone on a viewing and there's first time buyers there, you'll notice a difference between how you look at it through the eyes of a black belt investor and how they'll look at it as their future home and so on. You're looking at, how much is this going to be? What's my stamp duty going to be? How much is the refurb going to be? How soon can I get it turned around? What am I then going to be able to rent it at? Is it going down the private sector, or am I taking it out am I giving it to a housing lease on a 5-year FRI lease? A housing association, sorry, on a 5-year FRI lease. Again, I've mentioned it there as well. Frameworks. Stick to your framework. So when people first start working with me and the black belt property, whether again it's the accelerators, the first step, they may obviously qualify them for the academy, peak performers and so on. We've got to understand frameworks. So there is no way, again, I've got a little bit of a bookshelf behind me there, say there's 30 property books on there, whatever, okay? Imagine dumping all of that information on somebody within a 1 or 2 day, 3 day period. They're going to be absolutely overwhelmed, and it's that analysis paralysis. So we need to make sure that we're sticking with the frameworks and building on decent foundations, really. So the foundation you should be looking at, again, I said it again, how much am I likely to put down on this? How much is it likely to cost? What am I going to get back? How soon am I going to get it back? What's, the likelihood of it, the capital growth? Now, again, you might think, well, doesn't all property grow in value? Of course it does over the long run, but Some properties grow a lot faster than others. Okay, so central London, for instance, all right, compared to out in the sticks somewhere with not really much transport, not really much employment around there, you know, one little corner shop, and you need to travel 5, 10, 15 miles away to get anywhere near civilization. That's not likely to grow as much as some of your other properties in, you know, areas where there's better amenities and so on. Predetermined offer strategy there. Again, you might, how does this link into emotions? If, for instance, now, I don't think I've got any here, if we went to view a property and afterwards, because I always do a little bit of, you know, maths afterwards to see what it's roughly going to be like before I do a more detailed one when I get back, you're then looking and thinking, right, this is the maximum I can pay for this property. That's the maximum I can pay. So one we looked at the other day was up for 165. We thought it was quite a good deal at that price until I went for the viewing, and it's funny when the agent says it's just had a refurb, and I look and think, no, he or she just painted the entire property white and put down some cheap carpets. It hasn't had a rewire. The boiler's 12, 15 years old. There's lots of things wrong with it. You've got doors missing. It looks grubby. So the refurb criteria there is, getting back to that property 165, we thought, right, well, if we can get it at 155, 160, there's still meat on the bone. We could then, you know, add an extra bedroom, pass it on to a housing provider, you know, as a HMO and so on, once it's all past the regulations and so on and licensing. However, when I actually cast my eyes on the property, I realised that, you know, there was a lot more needed to be spent than the pictures and the description provided. So again, that's where the framework comes into it, really. Just keep disciplined all the time. Understand that discipline is what's going to help you become more successful. I always link things back to black belts. You know, you don't wake up and you're a black belt. It's something that happens over 4 or 5 years or so on. The same is true in investing in property journeys and so on. Don't be looking for these quick wins. It's more about that longevity and understanding the longer I stay in this game, the more successful or the wealthier I'm going to be. Again, link it back to that one. I know I've written a few blogs, or I have this in some of the blogs, maybe even the Property Cycle blog. It's time in the market, not timing the market. Of course, being able to time the market is fantastic, but property can be like a bad haircut, okay? You might have to go through a few problems. It might take a while, but eventually it will grow out. Pause and review. Mention that there as well. If ever you feel like you're getting deal heat, or even the estate agent saying, you know, the vendor needs an answer by 5 o'clock tonight. If you don't feel confident giving that, you know, the final offer, then don't do it. Simple as that, okay? Never feel you need to be pushed into a corner, because at the end of the day, this is your money and your livelihood or your future. So don't let somebody who's setting like this arbitrary time going, it needs to be in by 5 o'clock, otherwise they're not accepting it. All right, fine, okay. But if you're confident though to give your last offer by that time, then go ahead. But never feel like you're being pressured into it, because you could be going to bed that night thinking, why have I done that? I felt like I was pushed into it, that scarcity mindset, okay? There's plenty of properties out there. And again, link it back to that disciplined approach, really. Final one there, success comes from consistency. Yes, I'm like a broken record with this, and again, I'd like to apologise for the sound quality in this video. But it's the ability to keep getting up, keep showing up. If you're a business owner now, again, it's that ability to keep taking steps further forward, keep building out your systems, keep building up your team, making sure things become more and more profitable, making sure that you're trying to obviously look after your clients, you know, emphasize USP as much as possible, whatever it is. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it's about that consistency. I mean, what's that saying as well? Overnight success, 10 years in the making, and so on. So look for those long arcs. Look to yourself thinking, this is something I'm going to do for the next 10 years. And I know that in 10 years' time, if I act properly, if I act disciplined, I'll be in a much better position. Again, I'm going to leave it there, but discipline has been the main theme today. I know I started off with emotion. When you're starting to use your emotions, that's when discipline goes out of the window, okay? So think to yourself, if you're analysing deals on a weekly basis, if you're investing on, you know, a monthly basis, you need to make sure you keep disciplined, stick within your frameworks. I'm not going to go above this. I'm going to keep my refurb at this, be realistic with the refurbs and so on. I need to have various different exit plans. I'm not just going to get sidetracked because it looks like it's a fantastic property at a fantastic price. if something seems too good to be true, it often is. So if this has resonated with anybody, well done for staying the distance, 10, 12, 14 minutes. I don't know how long it's been. Maybe have a look at the Black Belt Property Accelerator. That's a stepping stone that you need to complete if you're looking to enrol into the Black Belt Property Academy and Peak Performers and so on like that. So again, I'm not going to tell you too much here, but you need to make sure you apply, and we review applications on a weekly basis. So somebody will be in touch, maybe myself, maybe my partner, to let you know about the process and to let you know about your application and so on. But maybe watch this video again, take down a few notes. But the one thing I do want you to remember is keep disciplined, okay? And again, that discipline should then help you in other areas of your life, but especially in your investment choices moving forward. Good luck. If you found any value, hit the like button, subscribe button, share it, whatever it is, and take care. Thank you very much. All the best.